if you're deciding that a precedent will be set, that they will be able to have their questions answered, you must afford the same, you must afford the exact same respect to our questions. Otherwise, I would argue that you're breaching our privilege.
Wow. Now it looks like Fergus is starting to get thrown under the bus.
Yesterday, the Liberals were raging lunatics because the Conservatives outplayed them at their own game. Well, today, the Liberals are now threatening to throw their own speaker under the bus for disallowing planted questions by the Liberals during question period.
Let's take a look.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, whether one thinks that President Trump's tariff threats are a negotiating tactic or a real plan, what we do know is what we can control. And the Prime Minister has lost control of everything. He's lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending and the deficit, lost control of inflation and housing costs, lost control of his own caucus. This has put Canada in an unbearably weak position. Mr. Speaker, will the Prime Minister reverse all the damage he's done, or will he just call a carbon tax election so we can do it for him?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
I think the Leader of the Opposition needs to reflect carefully on whether he really wants to amplify the erroneous narratives that the Americans are putting forward around, for example, our border, when less than 1% of migrants coming into the United States irregularly come from Canada, where 0.2% of fentanyl coming into the United States comes from Canada. These are things that we would all do well to stand up and say, yes, there's things we can and are working on together at our border, but amplifying these broken narratives is simply not responsible leadership.
I wonder where those numbers came from.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. So...
Let's take a breath.
Please don't make it louder that I'm doing a crap job of running this country. You should think about that, whether you want to, put more emphasis on that. That's not good leadership to tell everybody that I'm doing such a terrible job in running this country. We've been doing a good job at managing our border. Well, then why did you have Liberals standing up last week? Standing up and talking about, the border wouldn't be in the state that it was if it wasn't for Harper and all the cuts that he's made. You guys said that. I'm pretty sure it was Gilbo that said that. So, which is it, Trudeau? You can't have it both ways.
Oh, it changes day to day based on the narrative that he needs, right?
Breaking things is not responsible, Mr. Speaker, and that's what he's been doing for 9 years. My job is not to cover that up for him. In fact, he's broken our economy. He's doubled the cost of housing, doubled the national debt, doubled trouble across our economy with higher taxes on working Canadians. He's in the process of raising taxes on investment and energy right now, while an American incoming president wants to take our jobs and our businesses. It's understandable why President Trump wants Canadian jobs to go south, but why does this Prime Minister want to help him do it?
So he can be governor of the 51st state, of course.
Right. And we have a video dropping later today on that, where we compare the American narrative versus the Canadian narrative. And it's interesting. But anyway, we get back to this. What is Pierre talking about in terms of raising taxes on energy and investment? He's talking, of course, about the impending capital gains tax that is going to be discussed and no doubt passed as part of the fall economic statement that we're expecting the NDP to vote with. And by the way, that's a confidence vote, just so everybody understands that.
Yeah, and also the impending carbon tax increase that's going to be coming in April. So, Trudeau is freaking out about Trump threatening to put 25% tariffs on all our goods. Well, Trudeau is already putting tariffs, if you want to call them that, on all our goods through this carbon tax. Everything in Canada is getting more and more and more expensive, and that's because of the carbon tax.
Yeah, tariff is just a fancy word for a tax, and that's what Trudeau loves. So why wouldn't he like tariffs?
Mr. Speaker, we recognize that Canadians are facing challenging moments, which is why we are stepping up to deliver for them, whether it's by delivering a tax break over the next few months that the Conservatives are totally opposed to.
There's a good reason Conservatives are opposed to that tax break. Number one is because it doesn't do anything significant for Canadians. I mean, you heard about my grocery bill. You heard about Andre's grocery bill that I read out. I think it was yesterday. Look at your own grocery bill. When you go grocery shopping, you're not saving that much money. You might save $2 on a couple $100. So that's number one. But number two, it's going to harm small businesses, especially very small, family-owned businesses. Maybe there's just one person running the show. They have to figure out how to change their entire POS system for 2 months.
Well, and what Trudeau wants you all to do is actually spend all your money and spend your credit cards to go out and help the Canadian economy. That's what he wants you to do.
He should be helping the Canadian economy as the government. They should be putting real stimulus in place if it's needed. What they really should be doing is not inflating the price of everything by devaluing our currency.
Well, and he shouldn't be devaluing labor by bringing in millions and millions and millions of people.
Right. Why are students allowed to work? They shouldn't be here for working. They should be here for studying.
Whether it's by delivering a national school food program that is already helping thousands of Canadians across the country.
Wow, he's not making it easy today.
No.
How is it already helping people? It's not past the House.
It hasn't. They made an agreement in Prince Edward Island, but how? It hasn't even passed the House. What's to agree to right now? The bill is not law yet.
Right. So how are you implementing something that you haven't even decided on the framework and passed it?
Well, and they can't pass it right now because the House is seized. I mean, maybe they can put something in their fall economic statement and maybe they can request supply for it. But unless that bill goes through, it's not law.
That the Conservatives oppose, whether it's delivering dental care that's making a real difference in the lives of over 1 million Canadians, that the Conservatives not just opposed but did everything they could do to scuttle. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader just wants to exploit the challenges Canadians are facing while we will solve them.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, he created all of those problems. And a food program that hasn't served a single meal, or a temporary tiny 10-cent tax cut on a bag of potato chips will not fix what he broke, especially considering that his next plan is to quadruple the carbon tax to 61 cents a litre. You can just picture President Trump calling our businesses, encouraging them to leave Canada and set up south of the border where there is no carbon tax and where other taxes are falling. Again, it's clear why the incoming American president wants to take our jobs. Why does this Prime Minister keep helping him do it?
I love it when we're thinking exactly the same thing that Pierre is saying.
Yeah, I was going to say, it was a good question. Very good question.
He literally said, right when Trudeau finished, I'm like, you caused these problems. And then Pierre stopped. He's like, this is the guy who created all the problems. And this is the problem. So, maybe it's time we get to the root cause, the actual root cause of the problem. And it's not all these policy changes, it's the guy who put them in the first place.
Well, and that's exactly it. Trudeau's created this gaping wound all across Canada, and he thinks throwing a Band-Aid on it is going to fix it. That's not how you fix it. You have to get into it. You have to get the infection out, and you have to fix it.
Well, and he's operating like he's being strategic, and he's solving problems. You don't get credit for solving problems you created. It's like, if an arsonist goes by a house, sets it on fire, and then looks at it for, while half of it burns down, and then tries to put it out, and the police show up and they're like, but you set that fire. No, but I'm putting it out.
Yeah, it's like this. It's like if our child draws on the wall with crayon, and then we tell him, okay, you have to wash that off. We're not going to praise him for washing it off because he shouldn't have drawn on the wall with the crayon in the first place.
Let me say it once again, Mr. Speaker. The price on pollution puts more money back in the middle class's pockets across this country than it costs them. The Canada Carbon Rebate is a check that arrives 4 times a year and helps 8 out of 10 Canadians in jurisdictions where it arrives with more money than they pay on the price of pollution. It's how we fight climate change and build a strong economy for the future while putting money in the pockets of Canadians. That is what we are doing, while the Conservative leader wants to abandon not just the environment, but the economy as well.
That's right.
So, in post, I put up the statement that was in the Parliamentary Budget Officer's report on the carbon tax. This is a Liberal talking point. It is a misrepresentation. Is it a lie? It's technically not a lie because they're referring to the subtotal in the actual Parliamentary Budget Officer's report regarding the carbon tax. Because in the subtotal, it says, when you're talking about the non-indirect costs as it relates to the carbon tax, Canadians get more money. And that's the only part that they want to talk about. And they strategically, no doubt, instructed the Parliamentary Budget Officer to put that in there so they can have that talking point. But then right below it, you talk about, but considering all the indirect costs, 6 out of 10 Canadians are worse off. It is a net cost. It's like if you look at your bill and then, you try and argue to the store, oh, well, I'm only paying this much. And the store says, but you didn't take into account all the tax. Yeah, but I'm only paying this much. It says right there, I'm only paying this much. Well, hey, if the Liberals have their way over the next 2 months, then you won't have that conversation because the tax is going to go away.
But the scary part is how many people you see online who are touting this. Well, I'm better off for it, or Canadians are better off for this tax. That's not true at all. It makes me wonder if there are people who actually still believe this. And maybe they don't manage their household budget. Maybe they don't see the bills. Maybe they don't see how much groceries have gone up. Maybe they don't see any of that stuff. And they really do believe that they're getting more money back than they're spending. But the other part of me wonders if it's those Liberal influencers that they like to hire to peddle their narrative.
Well, and here's the thing, right? It's hard for people to measure an impact when you're taking it like a little bit at a time and a little bit at a time.
Well, and when it's hidden, if I go buy a bag of apples, maybe the bag is $7, and it used to be $5, let's say. Well, where did that $2 come from? That's the increase in the carbon tax, because the farmer has to grow the food, and then the trucker takes the food from the farm, brings it to the holding facility, they package it, and then they bring it to the grocery store. All these are hidden taxes that you don't know you're paying because they're being passed down to the consumer.
Well, and the best part about all of this is I've had discussions with people, and one of the arguments they say is, well, it does because how do you think the rebate gets funded? Well, it doesn't get funded from the industrial carbon tax. I can tell you that.
Right, because they're not even passing that out.
No.
They were supposed to be giving businesses their portion of the carbon tax rebate, and I don't think they are yet.
Well, they've planned to, but I don't. Yeah,
I don't think it's happened yet, though.
There's like tens of billions of dollars they were supposed to get back, and they haven't.
Right,
and
we heard a few months ago that they haven't, and I don't know if they've started.
And this is the issue, because many small businesses have frickin' closed because of the carbon tax, and so then the government, they just get to keep that money because the business no longer exists.
Yeah, my mom's business was one of them.
So it's a scam. Pure and simple.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
The last Conservative government fired 1,100 border officers. That allowed illegal guns and drugs to flow freely into our country. We are all paying the price of that callous Conservative cut. I want those border officers rehired. I want thousands more recruited, and I want their mandate expanded so they can patrol the entire border. Will the Prime Minister do that?
Then I guess you should be the Prime Minister instead of propping up this phony one.
Well, and why wasn't this part of your supply and confidence agreement? You've been part of this agreement, this government, for the past 3 years. Why didn't you do anything?
Right, because Jagmeet's willing to give away his support for free now so that he can keep his pension.
Oh, oops, how silly of me.
The honourable member for Simcoe North.
Mr. Speaker, the Finance Minister's report card is in. Canadians have the highest consumer debt in the G7. Per capita GDP has fallen for 6 consecutive quarters, and Canadians now make $30,000 less than their American counterparts. This is a made-in-Canada per capita GDP recession. And in the face of global trade and economic uncertainty, the finance minister's plan increased taxes on energy, on entrepreneurs, farmers, and physicians. So will this finance minister reverse her tax increases so Canadians can keep their jobs and investments at home?
The Honourable Minister for Finance and Deputy Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservatives seem to have an inferiority complex vis-a-vis the United States. But on this side of the House, we are proud to be Canadian. We are proud that the inflation rate in Canada has been within the Bank of Canada's target range all year. We're proud that we have the lowest debt and deficit in the G7, far lower than the United States. And we are proud of our universal single-payer healthcare system, which means Canadians live 4 years longer than our friends south of the border. We're proud to be Canadian. They should be too.
Yes, we are.
Wait a minute. Freeland just said, we have a lower debt and deficit than the United States.
Maybe overall she means, but Canadians have the highest consumer debt in the G7.
No, she's talking about the government debt.
Well, again, because they include the Canada Pension Plan in those numbers.
No, she didn't even say the ratio. She just said we have a lower debt. I'm like, duh, they're 10 times the size of us. You dummy. Ladies and gentlemen, the journalist finance minister. And I don't care if they come back and go, well, I didn't mean to say that. That's what you said. You're a politician. And if you're the one out there crowing that we have a lower deficit and a lower debt than the United States, who has like a multi-trillion-dollar economy, hello?
The Honourable Member from Davenport.
Okay, twice.
Mr. Speaker, the federal government has introduced a GST tax break that will put money directly into the pockets of Canadians, especially for families who need it most. In my constituency of Davenport, every penny counts, and a temporary GST tax break for the holiday season and early New Year is very welcome. My question to the minister is simple. Can she explain why the Conservative leader and his party voted against this tax break, especially when they claim to be champions of tax cuts and affordability?
Good question.
I'm sorry, say that again. Although the preamble of the question dealt with a government initiative, the question itself was asking the government to comment on the in terms of colleagues. I'll have more to say about this at the end of question period in terms of question, but I will mention to the honourable member from Davenport that unfortunately that question does not deal with the administration of government.
Shocking. Fergus actually made a good call.
Well, the table made him make a good call.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
He wasn't going to do anything until the table actually stood up and was like, hey, Fergie.
All right. But he enforced a good call from the table. We'll say that.
He did.
Let's say that.
So
what happened right there is that a member asked a question of the government, but they said, why do you think the Conservatives are doing this? Or why don't you explain why the Conservatives are doing this? You can't ask that. That's like Ryan doing something and then somebody asking me, why do you think he did that? I don't know. Go ask him.
Well, especially in question period, because questions are supposed to be dealing with the administration of the government. So that's why Pierre can ask about the carbon tax, he can ask about immigration, he can ask about scandals, he can ask about all this stuff. But you can't ask basically, well, why did somebody vote a certain way? That's not the administration of the government, that it's under the government's control. So in this case, this was a cooked up Liberal question given to them from probably Justin Trudeau's office.
Well, you saw how fast Freeland stood up to answer it.
Absolutely. It was probably written by her office.
Yeah.
So this was an attempt to try and like implicate and embarrass the Conservatives with this horrendously obvious scripted question.
Right, because just as you cannot ask questions of the opposition, you cannot ask the government why they think the opposition did what they did.
Right, because that's not the government administrating the country. That's the government commenting on a party's vote, which is not the administration of the country.
So I'm afraid that question is considered out of order, and I will be moving on to the next question. The honourable member, order please. The honourable member from York Simcoe.
Mr. Speaker, the Auditor General has revealed that this NDP Liberal government has paid out $3.5 billion in taxpayer funds to tens of thousands of people that were never entitled to receive it in the first place. This Prime Minister loves to spend Canadians' money, and he doesn't care if it's wasted or misspent, just as long as he can pose for the photo. Will the Prime Minister admit he has lost control of spending and his only solution is to raise taxes on Canadians?
The honourable minister for small and medium-sized enterprises.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have seen many versions of the Conservative Party leader during the 20 years in office, including the 2021 version that campaigned on the GST holiday. Unfortunately, this version hasn't supported small businesses. Our government is giving Canadians a GST tax break starting December 14th that will benefit retailers across Canada.
What? 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 You're trying to sit there and say that retailers are jumping for joy and there's a cheering throng at your door? Are you kidding?
No, maybe the big box retailers, I don't know, but small businesses are not happy that this is coming in so quickly, and also for such a short time. They have to go to all this work to reprogram their POS systems for 2 months.
Yeah, they in most cases they have to hire somebody to do it, and it's going to cost them thousands of dollars.
Right.
And guess what? They're probably not going to make that back in the extra sales.
No, and the argument may be, well, just write it off. But unfortunately, with write-offs, especially if you already owe less taxes than your write-offs, you're not going to get that money back.
Well, and think, this affects convenience stores. This affects any store that has some of these items on the list, which is also up for debate in the industry because everyone seems very confused as to what this means. Mm-hmm. Because as we showed you in the bill, it is not specific.
No, it's not at all. It's very general. And I mean, again, kids' books are on sale or tax-free. Kids' books are tax-free, but kids' coloring books are not. How does that work out?
Right. And how do you decide what is and what is not in scope? And
right.
What is most ambiguous is this whole business about food. Like, that is really, really ambiguous when you read that bill. Because all it really talks about, it implies restaurants and catering. It doesn't talk about groceries at all.
No.
So
it's just prepared food. So are potato chips prepared food? Are cookies at the bakery prepared food?
So, yeah. No. And small businesses. Yeah, you guys really love to help small businesses. Even the 77,000 small businesses that were not eligible for the CEBA loan, but you gave it to them anyway.
The NDP leader put on a big phony show this summer on the eve of a by-election, pretending to rip up the coalition deal. And recently he said, quote, "The Liberals will always cave to corporate greed and always step in to make sure unions have no power. We couldn't have said it better ourselves." And Conservatives have put forward a motion agreeing with the NDP leader. So Canadians will soon find out whether or not he means anything he ever says, or if he'll sell out union brothers and sisters to keep this corrupt Liberal government in power just so he can keep his pension. So, question to the government, have they put the coalition deal back together so the Prime Minister keeps power and the NDP leader keeps his pension?
Now that's how you ask a question, by stating something about an opposition party while still asking a question to the government, so it remains valid.
Well, I should hope that Andrew Scheer knows how to do that properly, given his extensive experience as the Speaker of the House.
Yeah, he knows exactly how to do that.
Right.
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Mr. Speaker, my question...
Sorry. One moment, please. Eric? So again, I will speak to this near the end of after question period, but I'm going to encourage, that was again not about the government business, but I see that I do see that the Honourable Leader of the Government, Government House Leader wants to rise to answer. So the Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I wish you had afforded the same courtesy to the Minister of Finance, who also wanted to answer a question. And I think it would be appropriate to make sure that we apply the same standard moving forward. But what I would like to say to the Leader of the Opposition is that we gave him an opportunity to debate that, and instead of taking it, they ran away afraid. So, Mr. Speaker, I am surprised that he's even bringing this up, because when we gave them an opportunity to hold that vote, they said no, Mr. Speaker. But that's just another pattern of their behavior, where they say one thing and do another.
You're forgetting the context, Karina. Good thing we did a video about it.
They're so bitter. They're so bitter that the Conservatives vetoed that unanimous consent, because that would have allowed them, basically yesterday and today and Thursday, they would be talking about government bills like C-63, like C-65, and anything else that they wanted to bring to the table that wasn't supply related. So
Karina Gold's like the evil witch that is upset that her plans were foiled.
Right? Because they thought the Conservatives were just going to be dumb and accept it and allow them to do that. And they were going to be laughing about it and ending the filibuster. But the Conservatives were like, nope. And then, as per our video that we dropped this morning, you would be able to see why the Conservatives actually did that. It forced Greg Fergus to schedule the opposition days and schedule the supply days. So yes, the government is going to be talking about government business, but it is strictly limited to business of supply. So anything over and above that, they can't bring to the table. So nice try, Karina. Sorry you're bitter.
The Honourable Member for Regina Capel.
That's just not true. They just got mixed up on what day the debate is going to be had. It's going to be held this Thursday, and the vote will be on Monday, and all Canadians will be watching who's on the side of Canadian workers. Because this Prime Minister launched a brutal assault on workers. He devalued their paychecks with his inflation. He drove up prices with his carbon tax. He's doubled housing costs. He's hiked taxes, canceled big projects that put union members back to work, and issued edicts that undermined their collective bargaining rights. So once again, question to the government: have they put the coalition deal back together so that the NDP will qualify for his pension while Canadian workers suffer?
The Honourable Minister for Labour and for Seniors.
The member seems to be referring to incidents last summer where, I might add, I consulted with the Conservative Party, who were urging me, as we did at the time, to come to the aid of farmers in Saskatchewan and throughout Western Canada who were trying to get what was a bumper crop to the ports and to international markets, which is the pride of Canada, Mr. Speaker. We intervened to save Canadian farmers and to save Canadian union jobs. That's what we did. The Conservatives sat on the sidelines. We'll always stand for Canadian workers.
The Honourable Member for Flamborough-Glanbrook.
Speaker, the NDP leader claims to have ripped up the deal with the Liberals, calling this government weak, selfish, and beholden to corporate greed. Yet he's voted over 24 times to hike the carbon tax, driving up the cost of everything. Meanwhile, 2 million Canadians visited food banks last month, 18% of them workers. Will the leader of the NDP sell out Canadians again, or has the Prime Minister made another backroom deal with the leader of the NDP to secure his pension at the cost of Canadian workers?
The Honourable Leader of the Government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, I'm not sure that that question had anything to do with government business, but on this side of the House, when we do that, whether it was the member from Kingston or whether it was the member from Davenport, our questions were taken away, even though they were with regards to government business. However, what I can say is that the Conservatives keep running scared. Whenever we give them an opportunity to do what they say, they vote against it. Whether it's cutting taxes and giving people a GST holiday, what did they do? Vote against. Whether it's actually coming forward with a motion to vote confidence in the government, what do? Vote against. Mr. Speaker, they're too scared to actually act on their issues. They'd rather provide slogans than solutions. On this side of the House, we're acting for Canadians. Thank you.
Man, she is bitter.
She is really bitter.
Yeah, like she just keeps bringing it up. Well, our questions got taken away. Well, ask better questions then. You guys know the rules. You're not new.
Well, and shout out to the MP from Flamborough-Glanbrook, our MP at this point, Dan Muse. So
awesome question, Dan.
Excellent question. And you got Karina Golding in a bit of a tizzy there. But I like, this is the funny thing. She says, "Well, every time they do this, they vote against." Well, they've already had a couple of non-confidence votes this fall, so pretty sure that was a lie again. Where's Maury Povich when you need him? And they're going to be having their confidence vote on Thursday. If you think that that's not actually going to happen, okay. Have fun.
It has to happen.
Yeah.
Well, they're going to put forward the motion, and I believe Andrew Scheer said that the vote will take place this coming Monday. But point being, it's coming. You guys can't avoid it. It's coming.
Well, and the media will be talking about it all weekend long. So that's the other reason to actually present this motion on the Thursday, because all the media is probably going to be talking about is the fact that this is on Jagmeet Singh's words. It's around Jagmeet Singh's platform. And if he votes against this, he's going to look really, really bad.
I have two other points of order which have been recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Member for Kingston Island, followed by the Honourable Member from Sandwich Gulf Islands. And I see that the Honourable Member from New Westminster Burnaby is also rising, as well as from Brantford Brant. The Honourable Member.
To add to the intervention of the House Leader, Mr. Speaker, I would like to submit the following to you. There seems to be a precedent that's developing that if you are of the side of the government, you belong to the political party of the government, your question will not be answered if you deem it not to be in line with government business. The problem with that is, Mr. Speaker, is that neither the member from Davenport nor myself are members of the government. We're not parliamentary secretaries and we're not cabinet. Therefore, we're entitled to the exact same rights that you afford to every other member of this House. So, if you're deciding that a precedent will be set, that they will be able to have their questions answered, you must afford the same, the exact same respect to our questions. Otherwise, I would argue that you're breaching our privilege.
Okay, so I was ready to stop question period. Wow. Now it looks like Fergus is starting to get thrown under the bus here.
Oh, of course. The Liberals do that to anyone and everyone. They use them and abuse them and toss them aside.
So, wow. So, like, now they're threatening the Speaker, who's a Liberal, who's been so partisan for the Liberals, and now because the table forced him to rule a certain way, now they're getting pissy.
Well, you know what is going to happen, because the Speaker cannot rule on matters of privilege that involve him directly, is they're probably going to bring in Don Tremont to rule on this matter of privilege.
Well,
and I don't think that's going to go well.
It all depends, because he didn't raise it as a question of privilege yet. So this is just a point of order at this point.
The Honourable Member from Sandwich Gulf Islands is rising on a point of order. The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, it's a different point of order, but related to the same question, which is this. When a member stands and poses a question which you find not to be within the proper frame of government business, If someone had stood and asked a question which used an inappropriate word, that member would be given an opportunity to rephrase the question and ask it again. In this instance, the honourable member for Davenport has lost that opportunity to ask a question forever. And I wonder, Mr. Speaker, if you could see the latitude to see if a member can quickly reframe a question and make it within the proper framework of government business.
You know, on the one hand, I want to say that's a good point from Elizabeth May, but on the other hand, I want to say that these questions are submitted ahead of time, so the Liberals should have known better.
Well, yeah, and you know, we didn't show both of them; we only showed the one. There was a couple of questions, one from Garrettson and one from Davenport. So I kind of see it, but at the same time,
you know better.
Come on.
The honourable member from New Westminster Burnaby is rising on a similar point of order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And of course, if you look at the jurisprudence, the traditions of this House, you have just a point to references from decisions made by the member for Regina Capel when he was Speaker of the House, when he determined that you were absolutely correct in cutting off a Liberal question that wasn't dealing with government business. You would be equally right in cutting every single one of those frivolous and vexatious questions coming from the Conservative Party. It's not as if they don't know the rules. They just refuse to respect them. So I would ask you to have them respect it by, if the question is not dealing with government business, you cut it off immediately. You don't let them finish, because that's what the member from Regina Capel put in place in this House.
Of course, Julian would say that. Those questions that the Conservatives asked were about the NDP and their partnership with the government.
Well, and here's the thing. The question that the lead up led to was, are you going to be essentially making any sort of government deal with the NDP in order to encourage them to vote with the government?
Sounds like a question about government business to me.
Yeah.
I mean, but asking a Liberal asking another Liberal, why do you think the Conservatives did that?
Yeah, it has nothing to do with it.
No.
Honourable member.
Mr. Speaker, I'm asking for an apology and retraction from the Minister of Labour in his use of unparliamentary language and an ad hominem attack against the member of Kamloops, Caribou Thompson, referred to him as a slime ball. Clearly heard it. Colleagues beside me heard it. I asked him about it. He doubled down. Unparliamentary, unprofessional, Mr. Speaker.
See that the honourable minister is rising on his feet.
Speaker, there was a time in this House where the honour of members was to be presumed. And the question that came from across there was strongly intimating that the Minister of Public Safety willingly put children in danger. We don't do that in this House. We should not do that in this House. That is not cool, and that is not correct. That member should apologize to the Minister of Public Safety for impugning his character and raising such an absurd question in this House of Commons. And I withdraw the insult if those snowflakes cannot take it.
The House is devolving into madness.
Yeah.
We don't typically see this.
This is ridiculous. So the Liberals jump up and down whenever the Conservatives say anything, but now that the Conservatives are saying, fine, we're going to play by the same rules as the Liberals, now they're being called snowflakes.
Well, and the Speaker has just lost control of the House. I mean, you have a member saying, oh, I'll withdraw the statement about being a slime ball, but I'm going to call the whole bench a bunch of snowflakes. Like, this Parliament needs to end. We need an election because this is not serving Canadians. And I think you could say, maybe you could say that the Liberals are instigating and the Conservatives are feeding it, whatever. It doesn't really matter. These guys need to work for us and they need to get to work now.
It is perfectly clear to this chair, as well as order. it's perfectly clear to this chair that members are in need of returning to their homes for the holidays. I'm going to the Honourable Minister. I'm going to ask him to withdraw that last comment as well, and I hope he'll also. I'll ask the Honourable Member to withdraw that last item, and then I will come back to the House on the rest.
In the spirit of the season where white stuff is indeed on the ground, if members take offense to being called a snowflake, then I certainly withdraw the snowflake comment that I said about the snowflake thing.
Okay, so we are, the chair is going to come back to the House on this matter. I do see the Honourable Member from Kamloops Thompson Caribou is rising on his feet, and I hope the Honourable Member will be very germane. The Honourable Member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is a member of His Majesty's Cabinet. There's no place for that. And secondly, to address the substance of the point, I did not say that the minister is putting people in danger. There are facts, and the government...
So
you let him go on.
Go on.
I'm going to start from the top here, Mr. Speaker.
I thank the Honourable Member. I'm going to come back to the House on this matter.
Holy smokes. Unbelievable. You can feel the tension in the House between the different parties. None of this is helping Canadians right now. The Liberals want to think that they are with their 2-month GST holiday, but they're absolutely not helping.
Well, just think, the GST thing is the only thing the Liberals have accomplished in the last,
2 months.
2 or 3 months.
Because this has been going on since the end of September or beginning of October at the very least.
Yeah, so they've literally done nothing. They passed the pharmacare program, but where's all the celebration of all the insulin being doled out? Where's all the celebration of all the birth control being doled out? Oh, right, you gotta wait a year,
right?
Because of what's in the pharmacare bill. It actually doesn't talk about handing out in medication. There's nothing in there even about funding it. So there has to be follow-up legislation to actually do anything with this.
And they're not going to be able to do it.
Right. And remember Jagmeet Singh was talking about, getting this medication out quickly. Well, what is quickly to you? Because this isn't even, at the earliest, it's going to be next fall. So, yeah.
Well, and we all know that's not going to happen.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. So, this is what the House is devolved in. Nothing. So it's time to admit, Jagmeet, this government is dead. It needs to be buried. And that means you need to be voting non-confidence next week.